Hello, it's just me. Hello, people. How's everyone doing today? Hi, hi, hi. Well, we're still here. Still here so far. Hi. Um, I don't know. I guess we should get to work. I haven't been really productive today, but I will be now, hopefully. I'm doing good, thank you. Um, so yeah, let's do something fun. Let's do something fun. Let's let's pretend like we're having fun at least. I cooked. I did cook though. I'm gonna post a photo of what I cooked. It was really good. It was really good, if I may say so myself. I'm a very good cook, I think. But let's talk about something specific. Let's give this time we have together some structure, so that we can feel good about the time we spend together, and it's productive for us. So here's what I was thinking. We started talking yesterday, or day before yesterday. We spoke about wants and needs. Through that, we spoke a little bit about character. Then we spoke about something bigger. We spoke about tone, something more sort of overarching and amorphous. And then we spoke about two movies, Erin Brockovich and Singing in the Rain. And then yesterday we started getting into the conversation about structure through, talking about Singing in the Rain. So here's what I'm going to do, because I know people always have more interesting questions than things I have to say. So I'm going to talk a little bit about structure today, so that we can just focus our conversation. Otherwise, it becomes, it's like the same thing we were talking about writing. What it is knowing your characters, so you can reduce the universe of possibilities of the things that can happen to them and the things that they can do. Working on a story is all about going through a process of reducing the universe of possibilities, so that every next thing the person can do or say or want is just going to be it's just going to come out of a process that's all about reducing the universe of possibilities. But how can structure help us to do that? How can structure help us? We started talking about structure yesterday, and then some of you guys suggested some movies, and somebody said La La Land. So I thought that would be really fun, because I have seen the movie. I had never read the script, so I went and read the script this morning, and it was great. It's great to read, to have a chance to read a script, and it's hard. I used to read a lot of scripts when I was trying to figure out how to do this, and well, in a way, I'm still trying to figure out how to do this, because every time you start working on a movie, it's like starting from scratch. So, but I've become less disciplined about reading scripts, and like by working with you guys or just doing this, I'm meeting you guys, how many ever show up, I get a chance to go and read a script again. That is not mine, and that is a great gift to me. So I read the script of La La Land. I'm going to talk about it not for a long time, and then we can get more specific through your questions. I looked at it sort of carefully, analyzed it. I browsed through it once, and then I read it deeply once. I wanted to figure out for myself how I can talk to you about La La Land structurally. And then one thing that I was very curious for my own writing was where the songs are. And in musicals, the general sort of thing that they always say, and this is like everything about writing, you don't really learn it until you do it. So this is something that I'm trying to learn, that where do the songs come. And one thing they always say about musicals is that the songs come when there is no other way for the characters to express themselves but through song. And that rule by and large stands for every song except for the opening number, which is, it kind of stands for that too, but that's how the movie's telling us that it's a musical. So I'm going to go through kind of a quick exercise with you. I'm going to talk about La La Land, and then I'm going to say here's where Act 1 ends, then Act 2 begins, here's the midpoint of the movie, here's the end of Act 2, and then this is the third act. Alright? But like when you go and read the same script and you do this exercise for yourself, I think some things are very easy to identify for everybody. Everybody will be on the same page about what is the end of Act 2. Because, the end of Act 2 in a movie is when kind of all is lost in terms of that movie. And then in Act 3, which is the last section of the movie, the characters are trying to reverse that or get back to some semblance of victory from that. So I'm talking in really super general terms, alright? So this is usually the end of Act 2. So when you, me, anybody reads the script, they'll have an easy time identifying what is the end of Act 2. Then the midpoint of the script is just right in the middle of the movie, is the middle of Act 2, and that's easy to identify well because it's a midpoint. But for La La Land, it's kind of really interesting, so I'll talk about that. Now the end of Act 1, I've had multiple people read my scripts and then tell me Act 1 ends here. And then I'm like, oh no, wait a minute, Act 1 actually ends there. And then somebody else will say, no, Act 1 ends here. But that's not the point. The point is that we may all differ about where Act 1 ends, when we are doing this exercise for ourselves. What I'm trying to communicate to you is that it doesn't matter where you think it ends. What really matters is to get across to you in your own process, and for me also, is that this 3-act structure, anything like it, is a tool. It's not a rule. It's not a rule. It's supposed to help you make your writing better. It's not something that I think of when I first write. It's something that when I'm finished and when I'm happy, I go back and impose this thing on my story. Now that being said, that doesn't mean that it doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that it's not important. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. Because I really believe that I've been reading scripts, watching movies, writing for so long that I believe that it's ingrained in me. It's ingrained in me, but at the same time, so I am using it unconsciously, but at the same time it helps me as a writer to go back to my script and think about it consciously. You know what I'm saying? So that's what it's about. It's about using it as a tool. So let's talk about La La Land. I'll try to make it less than 7 minutes so that we can open it up to questions, and it can be more interesting. And I'll always try to bring the answers back to the topic at hand, which is structure and La La Land. And so it's specific, it's specific and it's not arbitrary and it's not blabbering. So here we go. So the movie starts with an opening number called Another Day in the Sun, which introduces us to this milieu of LA, this place of dreamers. Everybody who's singing this song has a dream and they're stuck in this traffic jam in LA. We meet our 2 primary characters. Then we follow Mia, who's an actress, and we follow her into her day job, which is in a cafe in a studio lot. We go to her apartment, we meet her roommates. There's another song about trying to get her out into this party, and she much rather be by herself, but then she gets convinced to go. Then she's at this party, and in this party something really interesting happens. She goes into the restroom and she sings into the mirror a really poignant verse, which is unlike all the other songs that we've seen before. It's her internal voice, And then we come back into that party, and that number kind of ends with a big flourish with somebody jumping into the pool. And then she walks out of that party and walks into this club where Sebastian, the hero who we had met in the opening number, is playing a riff, which will come to be known as their theme, and it carries through the movie. And she meets him there, but it's like a fleeting meeting because he walks past her. He pushes past her. And then we go into a flashback back to the beginning of that day. And we see Sebastian's life, his whole life as a struggling jazz musician. And we see how dogmatic he is. And then we come back to that same moment in the story where we left Mia, and that's when he's getting fired from his job, and he brushes past her again. So we've seen the same story day play out from his point of view, her point of view, still in Act 1. And then we go to spring, and we see Mia's life, we see her auditions failing, we see a party where they meet again, and they sing a beautiful song together after that party called A Lovely Night. And then he chases after her. He goes to a studio lot where she works. They spend time together. She happens to have a boyfriend. And then after that, they decide to meet for a movie. Because she has an audition, and I think he's rebel without a cause, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong. She hasn't seen it. A lot of people who work in movies haven't seen it and lie about seeing it. So it's actually a really funny riff on that. And then he sings a song called City of Stars. And it's really, the song tells us that he's in love, you know. And this is unlike the Sebastian we've seen so far. We are about 35 minutes into the movie. And we haven't seen this guy this way before. Now here's where I'm talking about structure, is that when I go back and analyze the script and look at it, and I say, well, for me, this is the end of Act 1. The end of Act 1 is where, you know, from here on forward, the world is not going to be the same again for these characters from when the story started. Now he is in love with her. Something has really shifted here. And for her too, you know, she's looking forward to this date. She happens to have a boyfriend, that's an obstacle. But, well, the world has changed for both these people because they met each other and now they are starting to fall for each other. So we go into Act 2. And in Act 2, again we see her life of failed auditions, him playing jazz somewhere where he's not happy, and then but we know they're looking forward to this date. Then she stands up her boyfriend, like literally leaves mid-dinner and makes it for this date just in time. Then they go over to the planetarium and the Griffith Observatory, and they sing this beautiful song where they're floating in air. It's a great moment in that movie. Everybody knows it who's seen it. And then we are in summer, and then it's really, their romance kind of kicks into high gear. There's a beautiful montage about them exploring the city, like really the heart of the city, you know, like the nostalgic parts of LA. He talks to her about his jazz club dream. Another character comes into play who's kind of the opposite of home, who's sold his, you know, kind of soul and is playing more popular stuff. Then she's infected with this dream of creating her own play, her stand-up performance, you know. And then we see the reality of life kick in, as you know, as often happens later in love stories, even in real life. There's a dose of reality that kicks in, and he joins this guy Keith, his band, and to make money. And in the midst of all their struggles, we see them singing the City of Stars duet, you know. So in a musical, you see a character singing a song by himself, you know, like Sebastian did. And then he sings it as a duet with her. And that is, to me, is the midpoint of the story. It's pretty obvious. It's a big high note in the movie. It's right in the middle of Act 2. And it's a true midpoint of that story when the City of Stars duet comes. And that was really interesting for me to see, you know, like structurally, that the end of Act 1 is when he's singing City of Stars, and the midpoint of the story, which is like the high point of the story, is them singing it together as a duet. Then we start seeing things going wrong, you know, in their lives. His sort of compromises are taking him away from his dream. Her dream is failing. Her play that she puts up by herself is not successful, and he didn't even make it because he was pulled away by this band that he really doesn't want to be in anyway. And then she leaves him. She gets angry and she leaves him. And really, what is this? This is the story of, the spine of the story is their relationship. And now their relationship is at its ultimate sort of, not multiple. I'm sounding like that idiot on TV this morning who can't pronounce words and happens to be the president. And that's the ultimate low point of their movie, of their story, when they are separated and, you know, and they are apart. And we are about, like, I don't know, about 70 minutes into the movie, I think, if I go by the script, but probably a little bit more because there's songs that are not written into the script. But this is the end of Act 2. And now we know, just because we've heard stories for centuries, and in our subconscious mind as an audience, an expectation is already set up that these people are going to come back together in some way. But how is really the art of it, you know. And that's when I feel like the movie becomes really great and really sophisticated, which it is throughout, but especially now I felt like the movies became really beautiful. So we see their lives go on apart for a little bit, and it's a real low point in the story. And then he goes to her small town in Colorado because she gets an audition call. And he brings her back to the city. She auditions. There's a beautiful scene back in the observatory where they talk and they tell each other that they'll always love each other. And then it's winter again, but it's 5 years later. And now she's become a big star, a Hollywood star, and he has a jazz club. And they meet at that jazz club because she accidentally ends up in it because of a traffic jam. So, you know, just like the traffic jam in the beginning. And this is an important point, I think, to talk about, to pause a little bit from our structural conversation and talk about circularity. Because circularity is something that in stories, it comes through the process of writing, but it gives an audience a lot of comfort. It rewards their expectation, you know. Audiences are hardwired from watching and reading books and watching decades of cinema, that they expect circularity. But when you give it to them in an artful way, so these two people met in a traffic jam in the beginning, you know, they passed each other by, she showed him the finger. Now it's the traffic jam again that gets her to him, and that's what I'm talking about when I say circularity. And audiences love that, like readers love that, people love that because it's a way of rewarding expectations that are already hardwired in people. So here's where she walks into his club. She has her own life, she has a husband, she has a baby, he has his own life. And they meet each other, and then we see an alternate version of their lives play out. And that's the magic of cinema, you know, that we are not, we are always trying to restrict time and space, but at the same time we can make flights of fantasy. And you know, in our first talk we'd spoken about tone, and the tone of this movie, this sort of musical, with two really endearing characters, allows us to do that. It allows us to make a flight of fantasy with them. So their theme plays again, and then we go into this flight of fantasy, then we come back in, and we see they're going apart again, but they both know that their dreams have been fulfilled. So even though they didn't end up together, they ended up separate, but it's really a story like the opening number told us. This is really a story about dreamers and dreamers who achieved their dreams. So it's not like the love story matters, less than that, but the love story, even though it doesn't end like a traditional love story, we know that they'll always love each other, though they won't be together, and the love story helps them achieve their dreams. So that's essentially my sort of quick analysis on La La Land and the acts, you know, where Act 1 ends, where Act 2 ends, what the midpoint of the story is, and how it is faithful to the act structure, but at the same time, want you to see this as a tool, not something that should stymie you and paralyze your writing process. But I venture that you can take any movie and you can do this kind of a breakdown on it, and you'll learn a lot about writing through doing that. So we'll keep doing that. Actually, I think this is a good exercise. It'll really solidify our kind of conversation about structure if we do this often enough. And it's really fun for me. So I'll just pick another movie that you'll suggest to me, and I'll do this again in a couple of days, or maybe tomorrow, or whenever you want me to. I'm also going to start inviting some people over to talk together with me. I'm thinking of some people that I can reach out to. But hey, tell me, let's get into your questions. Let's answer some questions. So that I'm not doing this alone. Let me see if anybody has any questions here. Oh, I'm just scrolling. Okay. Thank you for this. You're welcome. Okay, somebody's asking me, I mentioned a book yesterday. Yeah, that was The Art of Dramatic Writing by Lagos Igri. That's what it was. Okay. Let's see, I think somebody has a question here. What was the process behind writing Lunchbox? That's a good question. I'll tell you what it was. It was this. It was what we are talking about every day. It was. I had a germ of an idea of a misdelivered lunchbox, but then I started thinking about who these two characters would be. I think yesterday we spoke a little bit about who they are and why they wouldn't be the kind of people who would just pick up the phone, and their relationship would always exist through those letters. So creating those characters and making them believable, so that nobody ever questions that. So it was really a back and forth between plot and character. It was just really figuring out how to make those two things so integrated. But it's really, the answer to the question is that that's the process. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about wants and needs. We're talking about tone. We're talking about structure. We're talking about dialogue. But it's the process of writing something is all that together. What is the tone of La La Land? I didn't know if there is any kind of measures. Like, I don't know if there's any way to describe it. Like, when I talk about tone, I always talk about consistency of tone across the board. Across every department of filmmaking, writing being one of them, and how all work in concert to achieve a tone. Otherwise, discussing tone without discussing the work that goes into it becomes a very amorphous thing. So what the tone of it is, that I think the tone, the most important thing is that the tone of it is consistent, and the tone of it is it helps us to make those flights of fantasy that we see in the end. Because in another movie, if the tone was like different or subdued, or however you want to describe the tone of this movie, but if it wasn't this tone, you wouldn't be able to achieve a lot of flourishes here, dreamlike flourishes that you see in the movie. So if you asked me, if you put a gun in my head and said describe the tone of La La Land, I would tell you, it's a sufficiently exuberant musical. But when I say sufficiently exuberant, I don't mean that. What I mean is that it's not over the top. It stays in the realm of realism, but it allows you to make flights of fantasy, and everything works in concert to do that. Oh, I don't understand this question. Are acting bears important in every scene? Can you clarify that? Like, I'd love to answer it. So, India is waiting for your films desperately. Oh, thank you. That's so sweet. India is waiting for my films. I don't know. Somebody's asking me a question I don't understand. Can you please talk more about the midpoint? I think, as I was saying, the midpoint is the middle of Act 2. And when I say midpoint, it doesn't mean that if you're reading a 120-page script, it's exactly on page 60. Or if you're reading a 100-page script, it's on page 50. That's not what I mean. I mean midpoint of the story structure that we're talking about. So this is end of Act 1, the midpoint of Act 2, and end of Act 2, and then Act 3. And then, of course, the end of the movie. The midpoint of Act 2 is usually they say, is when something happens that is the opposite of what will happen at the end of Act 2. That's probably the best way to describe it. So like in this story, at the end of Act 2, these two lovers, they separate. In the midpoint, they sing a duet together, They sing the City of Stars duet together. And that's the midpoint of Act 2. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay. Oh, this is a good question. The first song is one shot. Does that come under writing or the director's vision? Well, bit of both. Like, I often direct things on the page, and more so, as I go forward, more and more so. So my guess is, I read the script this morning, so I know that it was written on the page. But may well, if it wasn't written on the page, they may well have done it anyway. It depends on who picks the script up and what he wants to do with it. But in this case, it's the same. The writer-director is the same person. But oftentimes you don't want to write like camera angles in a script, but you do want to write everything that helps you to achieve the feeling of what you're trying to show on the page. And if that means to say that in one swoop, in one swoop we'll show all this, or we see this in one swoop. I'm just riffing here, but that's what you do. You do whatever helps you to tell the story on the page, to make people see the movie on the page. At the same time, you don't want to say wide on, close up, cut to profile, whatever. You don't want to make it unreadable, but you do want to convey. Like, so if I was planning to shoot a long sequence in one shot, I would convey that, but as poetically as possible. I would use words like in one fine swoop, or the camera glides, over this, but I wouldn't like overdo the camera directions. Wait, sorry, I'm trying to scroll here. Well, could you please explain a little bit about the ending of Lunchbox? Let's talk about it in the structure point of view, So what does the structure do? Like, we're talking about Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, midpoint, all this stuff, and obviously the ending of the movie. Well, the movie ends, whether that's Lunchbox or another movie out there that we'll pick up a script and analyze of, the movie ends when the characters have finished their journeys, when they have gone from their wants to their needs, or they've gone from one place to another, and there's nowhere else left for them to go as people. Of course, you can have other scenes. You can have another scene showing that, like an epilogue, but I don't know how much that helps. I feel like a movie should end when the characters have transformed. And if they're not going to transform anymore, there is no more function of plot. You can't carry on a movie once your characters have changed, and that's when you get out of the movie. And that's why in Lunchbox 2 we ended the movie when he has changed, he's looking for her, she has changed, she's waiting for her daughter to come back so she can leave, and they have transformed as people, and there is no reason to stay on after that. So, hey, this is a good question. Do you watch movies or read books when you're writing your script? I do, and I force myself to now, because there was a time when I used to not do that, and now I try to force myself to do that. I read a lot of non-fiction too when I'm writing, because sometimes it gets into my head that I don't want to be reading somebody else's fiction while I'm writing my own fiction, sort of thing. But I don't think that's so. More and more now, I'll watch and read things and just be loose and easy about it. Not try to torture myself, because writing is supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be a torture. And when you're younger, I'm gonna pick my phone up because I'm tired of leaning in. But when you're younger, you often think that, hey, I'm not going to read. And I've done this. I've gone spells of, I'm not going to read or watch anything for 3 months or 2 months or, 6 months or something, because I'm writing my own thing. And I've just found that to be very difficult on myself. I feel like, this is supposed to be fun. This job that we're trying to do, trying to learn or doing for a living, whatever it is, it's supposed to be fun, right? So that's what I've come to now, is that I just don't feel like torturing myself anymore. So I'll always read things. I read a lot. I watch things, but I'm very careful, especially when I'm writing something. If it's something that I'm watching and I don't like it, I stop immediately, because I really believe in like sort of the garbage in, garbage out. So I try to watch good things that I know are good. Maybe some things I've seen before, or like recommended by people that I trust, or recommended highly by the internet. But to answer your question, I don't want to blabber on about it. It's very important. Don't torture yourself, especially with all this shit going on now. That don't torture yourself. Read great stuff, watch great stuff while you're writing. It only helps you. I can see Wong Kar-wai's impact on your films. Is he your inspiration? Of course. I love his use of voiceover in all his early work. I think I said it yesterday or the day before. Somebody asked me the same question. But I love his use of voiceover. I think it's very artful because it's so existential. It's the kind of existential that you can't film, but you can invariably show something mundane on screen and play this existential great sort of voiceover. And I always try to aspire to that. I think he's quite a genius. I mean, as a writer too. This is what we are talking about here. Um, hey, somebody asked me an interesting question: does non-linear screenplay require a third act structure? Yeah, yeah. Does it require a three act structure? Does anything require a three act structure? I'm not sure. It's like it's a tool. Like thinking about things or analyzing movies, your own or somebody else's, in kind of putting it into a three act structure, like what we just did with La La Land. It's a tool for us to learn about writing, to make our own writing better. It's not that it requires it, but I would venture that you could take, and this has been done oftentimes. You can go online and see it. Is that somebody must have taken Pulp Fiction and analyzed it in a three act way. And you can do that. I mean, even if you're writing something that cuts between 4 different timelines, and it's non-linear, it goes from past to present and future, and sometimes the future happens first, and it doesn't matter. The way the story is laid out, it is. I think it's going to adhere to a 3-act structure, or maybe it's not. It depends on the writer, but I bet somebody who didn't write it will be able to take it and say, hey, these are the 3 acts. This is the midpoint, But what I'm telling you is that it matters and it doesn't. It matters only if it helps you. If it doesn't help you, then it doesn't matter. What is the role of the songs in the movie? I mean, it depends on what movie you're talking about. I think if you're talking about La La Land specifically here, well, it is a musical. And what I really loved about it is that I didn't see there was any song in it that shouldn't have been there, Like it really felt like to me that each time those characters were singing, they had no other way of expressing their inner life. There was no moment in that movie where there was a song playing and you could say, hey, they could have done this in dialogue. So I think a song coming about only when there is no other way to express yourself. I think that's kind of a good rule of thumb. And it's the same for Singing in the Rain, It was there were songs over there that represented breakthroughs. They represented this moment of exuberance. They represented when somebody was trying to get somebody up on their feet again. And the song was the only way to do that, in that movie. Okay, let's see this question. It's a long one. Last scene in La La Land, which we get to know that they are not together, and she turns before leaving the restaurant. I find that scene the most powerful in the film. Yeah, that's a good thought. I do too. Okay, short film recommendation, Peacock on Amazon Prime. Okay, man, I'll watch it. I look forward. How do you write a film? Do you have a generic idea of the scenes, or do you write down beats and then construct a scene? Yeah, I've answered this question before, but happy to do it again. What I do is I outline. I lay down the story beats in a yellow legal pad over and over. For some reason, it has to be yellow, and I write with a fountain pen. But I write to make myself happy now. So and even before, it's like I like to play these games. I like to write with a nice pen. And this is a gift somebody gave me, and I make good use of it. I love pencils, but to answer your question precisely, yeah, I do write down the story beats. I outline an entire film, and then I do it again and I do it again, and I keep adding to it everything I learn about the characters as I'm doing it. I keep sort of bullet pointing the story beats out for myself from beginning to end until I'm happy. And then I feel confident to start writing it. And then I start sort of going deeper into the scenes. So those story beats, they change into scenes, Sometimes one story beat changes into 2 scenes, or it's 1 scene, or it's a moment of, Okay. Oh, what is the basic mistake people do while writing the script? I don't know, man. I don't know, what is the mistake people do when they're living their lives? It's the same thing. The thing is that you of course you make mistakes, even in your evolved in your career, if you see in Godfather 3, it's it's not about making mistakes and all. It's just about the only way to learn writing is to doing it, doing it right and then doing it wrong, and then each time you write something new, you start all over again. Do you think about writing shorts differently than features? No, honestly, no. I just wrote a 30-minute thing for. It's a 30-minute story based on a news article that I was going to shoot actually this week for one of the streamers, and I did not think about it differently. And it's not like what I'm talking to you about now is structure and the acts. These are tools to help you, and I did not think about the act structure when I was writing it. I just feel it's so ingrained in me that after that I was able to take it and say, this is how the acts are laid out in this 30-minute thing. So it's a tool. Like, don't worry about it too much, is what I'm saying. What if a movie has only one structure? I don't understand that question. If you can be more, if you can elaborate on that. How do we crack great log lines? I don't know, man. Just keep trying. Great log lines. I mean, I think you have to convey what the story is about. I would try to marry the character's transformation into it. So I would say a man goes through this, a woman goes through this, and finds out this about themselves, something like that, rather than saying that this is a bank heist movie and people are held in a bank for 25 hours, But somebody has to come out transformed from that. So I would try to include that in my log line or my pitch. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. Do you read my upcoming writers? What do you mean by that? My upcoming writers? I don't know what that means. Do you read stuff from? Yeah, I mean, I read stuff from upcoming writers. You mean novels? Yeah. I mean, I'm a voracious reader. I just picked up my own before all this stuff shut down. I picked up a bunch of books to read during this time. Why don't I show you? I read recently this wonderful book, The Weight of Ink. It's the first time novel. It's called Rachel Caddish. She's just lovely, really great book. This book I'm looking forward to read. I haven't read it yet. It's supposed to be really great. I saw a review in the New York Times. This is a first-time novelist. It's got a lot of great reviews. I'm about to start reading this now. Right now, I'm reading The English Patient again, because I studied the script, because it's a beautiful screenplay. I wanted to read the source material, and I'm reading this. It's not a novel, but it's about musicals. So yeah, I try to read. I read a lot, and I feel like just like filmmakers, even for novelists, their best work is oftentimes their first work, and it's not always true, but it's oftentimes true. Okay. Well, what else? Do you direct stuff by the writers? Yeah, if I can rewrite it, if I can put my hand in it, because I feel like I can direct stuff better if I have my hand inside it. So I can feel it in my bones, when I'm standing on a set. It's hard to, if my pen hasn't been through something. What else? Somebody said they want to pitch my stuff. Okay. Do you think Tiwari's ghost has completed the story? Without it, it wouldn't be the same? Well, I hope so. I don't know if he's completed the story. I think that character was sort of lingering in the whole movie. He was spoken about, and then he comes out in his imagination. Yeah, of course. I mean, I don't think it would be the same movie without him. Absolutely not. No, people often ask me if they can send me direct messages. I don't get a chance to check them as much. Or if they can email me now, I can't share my email, unfortunately. But if you go on IMDb, you can contact my agents. I think that's probably the easiest way. Like, the formal channels are not as formal as they sound in this business. How important it is to know the details Well, is it important to know the details of the location while writing a script? Well, yes and no. It depends on what it is. What the thing is. It's hard to answer that question. But there's nothing wrong in aspiring to a certain kind of location in the script. To have in your head, like somebody asked if that first opening sequence of La La Land was written in the script. Yeah, and it was. But is it important to have it? To have that kind of detail in? I think it's important if it's important. But yeah, you can aspire to a certain kind of location and you can make it clear in your script. If in order to make your scene work, you need something with a lot of depth, you can write that down by saying that the character is walking through this space and this whole scene is going to happen with this character walking through this space. And if it's a 3-page scene, you pick it up and this has got to be something which is, has a lot of, mileage to walk, so it can enable what you wrote. Books such as Save the Cat, Working Out 15 Structure Points. I don't think those books, I don't like those books. There's a couple of books on writing that I like, and I can name them for you right now. I love The Art of Dramatic Writing by Lagos Igri. Now, it's not like I haven't read those books, because every person starting out and a young writer has read all these books, that are like bestseller screenwriting books. But what really helped me is The Art of Dramatic Writing. What really helped me is John August's blog, johnaugust.com. He's a great guy. I also use his software, Highland. I mean, I'm just not plugging it for any other reason except that I'm a user of it, and I paid for it, so it's not like he's gonna give it to me for free because I plugged it on an Instagram live. But he does a lot for writers, and I appreciate that. But I use his software to Highland. It's cheaper than the other shit, and it's much easier to use, I find. But The Art of Dramatic Writing is a good one. If you have formatting questions, there's a book called The Hollywood Standard. That's something that it's not to read, but it's a reference book. So if you have a question about formatting, you can usually get it answered in that book. Apart from these, I think the best thing is to read a lot of scripts and do what we are doing now. We are analyzing a script, and we analyze La La Land. I mean, I learned more from doing that than I would from reading a book. What is the Eye of the Duck scene? I don't know what that is. Hey, Brinda, how are you? Somebody I worked with, really, really great actor. Which movie will you do tomorrow? Well, tomorrow I'm going to be stuck in the house like you, man, like all of us. Hopefully we'll get out of this soon, and we'll get back to our lives. But I don't know. Somebody asked me a question about location. Would be great if you recommend 2 or 3 films every day. Yeah, it would be. I also need some recommendations. This is crazy. What I really need is recommendations of series, because I feel like I don't watch episodic stuff enough. So I would love some recommendations too. I watched the Florida Project last night, and I really enjoyed it. How do you balance subtlety and depth while writing? I think let's talk about subtlety first of all. Subtlety for the sake of subtlety is just something. It's not good writing. But we were talking once before about saying things versus showing things, and obviously showing things is always better. But doing both at the same time, now that's not very subtle. So I always try to do just show things rather than say them, and that contributes to like subtlety, because people are really smart collectively, and you don't need to hit them over the head with information. So yeah, oftentimes speaking of the Florida Project, I saw that these kids accidentally burn a house down, right? They burn a house down, but we don't see that. We just see them lighting a pillow in a fireplace, and then later from a great distance we see that house burning, and that to me is like beautifully subtle. And if subtlety, it's subtle and within the tone of the film, it contributes to the tone of the film. Now, if in that movie, the Florida Project, we saw the house burning up and those kids running out of the house, that would be tonally inconsistent. So that's what when we talk about tone, that's what I mean by things being tonally inconsistent. It's hard to talk about tone in any other words except to talk about its consistency across a movie. Last scene in La La Land in which we got to know that they aren't together. Okay, yeah, I agree with that. Do you write every day? Ooh, yeah, I do try to write every day. I also try to take rest days. This week has been really hard. I didn't write much on Monday, didn't write much on Tuesday. Yesterday was Wednesday. I wrote 3 pages. Today I haven't written, but I have read about 10 pages that I wrote many days ago. Hopefully, I'm going to go for a long walk actually today because I am in the clear. I don't have the virus, which is not to say that I can't get it in the future, but so today I can actually get out of my house and I'm going to go for a long walk. I'm going to go for like a half-hour walk and then hopefully I'm going to write. But usually when I write, I sit down at the same time and write. Okay, wait, I'm going to scroll down because I think I missed a lot of questions. Okay. How is it different writing songs than movies, than a movie for a movie like La La Land? Like, I don't know, like I haven't written a whole lot of songs, but I feel like in the screenplay they have placed the songs in the right places where they've said that this is where a song happens because a character cannot express themselves with any other way through song. And then I think they've worked with a songwriter and a composer in doing that. Somebody asked me a question about endings again. I think I already answered that you end a movie when the characters have transformed. What else can we do? Do you write dialogues in Hindi and translate? Yes. When I'm making a Hindi movie, that's what I do. I write. I don't translate as much as I adapt, and I get people to help me. Okay. Somebody's asking me a question, a rather specific one. Somebody's saying hello. How do you make scenes shorter? Well, it's not a question of making scenes shorter. You get into a scene. This is the best advice I got about writing scenes is that you get into it as late as possible and you get out as early as possible. You'll see that in a lot of screenwriting books too, but that's pretty much what that's the best advice somebody can give you. You get into it as late as possible. It's kind of like social distancing now, you run into the grocery store, you get your shit and you get out of there. That's essentially what writing a scene is also. You get in as late as possible and you get out as early as possible. But that being said, one of my regrets is that while I was cutting a movie, the actors had paraphrased the dialogue and they had gone on a very interesting riff, and I still regret cutting out that dialogue. And it didn't. At the time, it was a good decision, and even now, it is a good decision because we got in as late as possible, left as early as possible. But I miss the poetry of those words, that I cut out. So any advice that I'm giving you is also I regret doing some of those things, being very extreme about those things. I think when we talk about writing, in general, when we talk about structure, when we talk about tone, we talk about anything, we don't have to be militant about it. We just have to use these as tools that help us, but we don't have to be super militant about anything and say, hey, this is how it is, because it's not. There's no rules. Somebody smarter will come along and write something amazing, and he won't follow any of these rules, or she won't follow any of these rules. So I don't have to be militant about these things. I've heard that you ask your writers to put a lot of detail in their script. How much? Usually I write my own stuff, but I don't know what you mean by detail. But I was telling somebody earlier, you want to write whatever, you have to write visually, and you have to write only to the extent that it helps somebody else make that thing their own, to be able to see it, right? I mean, you have to put as much detail uh, as you need for the other person to see it visually. If you overwhelm them, like, a person sits down, crosses their legs, ties their shoelaces, looks, you don't have to imagine a performance. You have to allow an actor to pick it up and then be able to perform it on their own terms. So you just have to put, I would say, a minimal amount of detail, only as much as you need. Okay. Okay. Looking for a question here. Most of the scripts we get online are final after editing version. How much does it change from the time you go on the floor till the... I don't think that's true, actually. If you go online and you look on some of these sites where free scripts are uploaded, they usually upload the shooting script. Very rarely have I seen like the post-movie script. So, there's a movie called The Kids Are Alright. It's a really great movie with Mark Ruffalo, who's an amazing actor. One of my favorites. In that movie, if you go read the shooting script and you see the actual movie, it's really interesting how the writing process continues. It's a good example of how the writing process continues even into the editing phase. It's a really great example of that. So The Kids Are Alright. If you check out the shooting script of that. Well, then, some people ask me questions about explaining this scene or that scene from a movie that I've made. I can't do that because that kind of beats the point of making the movie. It's like explaining a joke. If I tell you a joke and you don't laugh, then it's kind of like it didn't really work, So I can't do that. I will still explain my jokes, but I'm not going to explain my movies, all right? When writing, how do you think about giving your character actions to do that? Reveal who they are. Well, that's what you do. I think people are what they do. And oftentimes in movies we see people saying something and doing something else, and that's a really good writing kind of tool, because people say anything even in life, but what they do is who they are. Okay, hope to see answers to my question. Sorry, I'm scrolling and I'm just picking at random, so if you have a question, just pose it. What book would you recommend to understand time and space better? I don't know. I don't understand the question, honestly. But I would say, to answer your question, that the use of time and space, both as a constraint and a strength in movies, that's a really interesting thing to think about, right? You're always trying to constrain time in a movie, when you're writing a movie. But at the same time, you can make vast leaps and jumps from one timeline to another, one storyline to another, in a way that you can't do on stage. You can do on screen. But I think the best way to understand the use of time and space in movies, I honestly think, is to read screenplays. I honestly think is to read screenplays that do that, and screenplays that will help you write the thing you want to write. So you curate a list of reading for yourself and say, that's the kind of movie I want to make. That's what my movie is, kind of like that. It's about one person's struggle against a system. I don't know, you read the script of Dark Waters, read Erin Brockovich, read even All the President's Men, so could you discuss Lost in Translation in the future? I would love to read that script again. I read many years ago, so yeah, let's do that. Okay, how do you make dialogues more nuanced and not like... I've found that writing dialogues is so hard. Well, I think, yes and no. They have to be like a conversation. I think writing good dialogue is also about knowing the subtext, like leaving things unsaid is really important. Having people convey things not directly. So from my own work, for example, there was a scene I remember when Nawaz's character tells Irfan's character that you're looking 10 years younger. That's a way of saying, hey, something's different about you today. But what if he said, hey, something's different about you today? That's really lame. That's kind of lame and on the nose, right? So you start from there, and then you start thinking about how would someone say that to someone else in real life. How would that person say that character say that? And that's how he would say it. He would say, you're looking 10 years younger today. Hey, so I'm going to keep going over these questions. We have 4 more minutes. This is really fun, guys. So, so what's your next movie in I don't know, man. Like, I'm stuck in an apartment. I don't know what's going to happen to all of us. But, we should have fun with it. Okay. I'm just looking for a question that I can answer. Ta-da. Somebody says, dang, I'm late again. Oh man, don't be late. But character revelation. Please explain a bit. Explain character revelation. I think the best way to answer that question is that characters reveal themselves over the course of the story. So you use the plot to reveal character. We spoke about wants and needs as a tool before. A character wants something, but they need something else. So the story helps reveal that to them, over the beats of the story. But absolutely, characters reveal themselves over the course of a movie, beat by beat, and that's what the plot is for, and vice versa. Now we can have a longer discussion in the future about plot and character and stuff. That's everybody's favorite thing to talk about. Anything else? Any other questions that I missed? Did I miss something? I know I missed a lot because I'm just scrolling. Oh, it's so sweet. Your live chat is better than film school. Okay, you get your money back from the film school. This is free. Which movie are we going to discuss tomorrow? I don't know. We can discuss a movie tomorrow. I'd like to keep talking about structure because I think that we do that enough times, and then we have a strong, foundation of it, and helps me. What movie do you guys want to discuss? Hello, somebody just showed up. Hello. We can discuss a movie tomorrow. I'll think about something. I'll think something up. What should we discuss tomorrow? Just put it in the comments or something. But I think we should continue talking about structure. I think that's good because something like that, you don't want to abandon it. You start talking about something like structure. And I think the best way to talk about it is talk about it over the course of different movies. Like say, apply that concept to different movies. It's the same with the conversation about tone that we are having. So we should keep talking about that. Keep talking about characters. Okay, I'm going to answer this question, and then we have a minute. After writing the first draft of the screenplay, I feel the film doesn't have a particular theme. Well, look, I think the theme is again a very amorphous thing. It's a word that really scares me. What is the theme of the story? Because I don't know how to articulate that. I always refer to it as the center of the story. What is the center?